seems like this is a kind of a muddle approach to, we're saying almost don't make it too rational, don't make it fit together too easy, too neatly, because the model is what you need. It was interesting that it all seemed to me that when the Irish, you know, when the IRA and the UDA and everything and the British government got together and tried to sort out the problems, it was a right muddle of an agreement, and basically it worked because neither the Republicans on one side nor the UDA on the other side were prepared to push it, and were allowed the model to bring about that solution. And I'm wondering whether it's that lack of model and the overbearing rationality of everything that brings about this, what you've also noted as a hidden injury. I think we've talked about it a little bit before, but we might need to just refresh with that anomie and rootlessness and loss of connections. And it always reminds me of the contrast between English literature and French literature. We've talked a little bit about it, but I remember a contrast between Shakespeare and Racine. And Racine's plays are beautiful, precise German engineering. I know they're French, but you know, beautiful engineered things. Shakespeare's is a hodgepodge of a bit of this and a bit of that, and we'll put in a little bit of magic, and now we'll do that. And it kind of summarizes one way that the modernity of the English, as it started off, seemed to be this ability to muddle through things and keep the spheres separate, because you couldn't really see how to put them together, even if you wanted to. Whereas as modernity's progressed, it's mistaken, it's forgotten about the model that is required, if you like, to keep the separation working, and therefore to keep the connection, almost by disconnecting people, but doing it in a modeled way, you still felt you were able to work through, with your little bits of black marketing and the humor and all these other things, and the other enchantments that you brought in to kind of weld it together. It didn't really make much sense to have talking animals and this, that, and the other, but it kind of worked. And we're progressively forgetting all that and losing it. And is that another reason why we're feeling more lonely now, and perhaps more distressed within modernity than we've done before, and more disconnected and more dissatisfied?
Well, that's a big question to take us up to lunch. I think, yes, I mean, Frenchmen who came to England, like my favorite Hippolyte Taine, and he wrote his notes on the English. It's a wonderful book. And other French who came to England, like Tocqueville and others, they said, and Tocqueville said this explicitly about English law, it's a terrible muddle, complete chaos, everything contradictory and muddle, and no one understands it. He said, I asked around my English friends, and they said there's only two people in England who know how the English legal system works. One of them, Lord Chancellor, perhaps, and someone else. So it's a terrible muddle, but it works. It's a wonderfully free and vibrant society. France, everyone can a French schoolchild can tell you how the French legal system works, and it's a disaster. It's over-bureaucratized and over-rationalized. And the system, the contrasts you mentioned, which I have noticed between French literature, Racine and other writers, and Shakespeare, who's the ultimate muddler. I mean, what a hodgepodge of stuff. His plays are a hodgepodge of different genre, different historical antecedents, different forms, different poetic forms. And yet it's a towering success. I mean, it's the same in our muddled architecture. I took someone into King's yesterday or the day before, and I said, this is King's College front courtyard is a typical English muddle. 15th century Gothic church, 18th century Gibbs building, very classical, and then 19th century neo-Gothic restoration by Wilkins on the left. Now in France, they'd have torn the church down and then the 18th century thing down and made it all in the current style. And you find in many parts of the world, they just go for the modern and make everything consistent. We like, people to be disheveled and inconsistent and muddled. And
It's London versus Paris, really, isn't it?
exactly. And even our prime minister, one of the few good things about him is that he's such a muddle. I mean, his hair is a muddle and his speech is a muddle. And, he's very English in that sense, which is what they teach them in Eton, to be muddled, basically. It's a muddling school. Maybe that's why they were called muggles in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
He meant to write muddles, which he wrote muggles instead. Anyway, so muddling, and one area for it is in diplomacy. I mean, it's called constructive ambiguity in diplomacy. So basically, you leave the thing vague, and then each side, their pride is resolved. They can go back to their followers and say, look, we won. We got this, this, this. Then they leave out all the bits they didn't get. The other side can do the same. So since it's got to be a compromise, the more muddled the compromise is, so that neither of their followers can see, the better. And they can read in, hope can read in that it was a better deal than you thought. So you come out with a muddled solution and everyone is at least partly satisfied and you get an agreement. And that's what they should do in Afghanistan. They should make a muddled agreement. The Taliban will do their best and we'll do our best, and we'll see what we can do, and nothing too specific. And then who knows? But if they try and make it, but you can see it also interesting in our language, because one of the differences, as I was told, between, say, English humor and American humor, and English language and the use of language in America, is English language is multi-layered and muddled, because when you say something, particularly in English ironic humor, you say the opposite of what you mean. That's what irony is. And Americans say this is bullshit. Say it as it is, none of this wrapping it around in, because you are muddling up. You really believe this, but you say that. And what are we going to take from that? But English humor throughout as I learned it at school, and a lot of English speech and so on, was preserving constructive ambiguity in the relationship. And a lot of English conversation, when I look at my conversation with my family, a lot of it is kind of, I mean, it's not secrets and lies as in the famous film, but in a family, you have many areas you can't talk about and many subjects which are painful and so on. And you maintain a reasonable, civilized relationship through humor, irony, saying the opposite, alluding but not picking it up. And so our social lives are kept tolerable with each other through this process of constructive ambiguity all the time in the relationships. I mean, I don't come and say your hair is a mess, Richard. I may make some joke about your punk hairstyle, but our relationship would soon end if I was too honest about things. I just keep sort of, be economical with the truth and basically live like that. And that just link it up finally to the other thing which we can deal with quickly, which is anomie and rootlessness. The cost of all this is a detachment. I think part of the objection to the English sort of humor and speech is that it holds you back a bit. You keep your reserve, you keep your autonomy. You don't establish a direct emotional relationship. I mean, in American, you talk to them, they say, great, how are you? How's your parents? And you enter into a very strong emotional bond pretty quickly. In the English, you circumlocute, you sort of go round, and it may take some months or years to build up a proper deep friendship. So the English are famous for their reserve and so on. And they build a little world around themselves. Now, the benefit of all that is freedom, independence, sovereignty, and so on, and some degree of sort of creativity and so on. What is lost is the lonely crowd, that basically we are all on our own. And this leads into the worries of later 19th century sociology, particularly Durkheim in his theories about anomie. You are rootless, you are, no one cares very much about you. You can care about a lot of people a little bit, but this, you don't get involved, Alan. And the advantage is freedom. The disadvantage is loneliness. I mean, an extreme form is, in playing a game of football. If you get involved emotionally, if you fall in love with your goalkeeper, and all the time you're wanting to go off and not kick the ball around, but hold hands with your goalkeeper, the game will be, not very satisfactory. So you keep emotion and closeness. You're a professional within that sphere, and don't let, and again, it's anti-corruption. You don't let people get to you, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But where it leads is to this loneliness, anomie, and separation that children have from others.